Ready to go. All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Andy. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Andy Jackson accepted our invitation to our show. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem, Andy. I mean, you're a very famous guy. You know, you're a British recording engineer, best known for his work with the British progressive rock band Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a famous guy. I don't think I'm a famous guy. I think they're famous, and I went along for the ride. Really,
you're a very humble guy. So.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have gone along for the ride. It was great. It's been great, you know. So
yeah.
I always think I was very lucky because doing this for a living, and then I end up working extensively with a band where I really like the music, and you know that's not necessarily a given. A lot of people in my business end up doing music they don't like, so I consider myself very lucky, really.
Absolutely, when there's a match between the music that you like, or and then somebody is paying you good money to do it. It's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
And all right, so let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? And how old were you when you perhaps taking piano lesson or guitar lesson?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, my dad was a decent amateur musician, but that's all. I mean, he played in jazz bands when he was young, but not for a living, just for fun. And he was a journalist, in fact. But yeah, so there was music around, but it was more that thing of starting to discover music, you know, when you're a teenager and things like that, and really, you know, getting a passion for it. And when it was sort of getting to the point where I was going to finish school and what am I going to do, and I was considering going to university, and I didn't like the idea, and it was a friend at school said, "Why not get a job in a studio?" And I thought that sounds like a great idea. So eventually, with a lot of writing letters later, I did manage to get a job in a studio, and I thought, yes, this is the life for me. I love this. So yeah,
good for you, man. Good for you. What kind of music were you listening when you were in equivalent of high school here? You were 17, 18. What kind of music?
Yeah, well, that was the mid 70s. So there was an awful lot of kind of British prog, you know. So King Crimson and Genesis and Van der Graaf Generator, Soft Machine, Floyd, obviously, Hendrix, Zappa, you know.
Wow.
That sort of, you know. So I mean, some of those you could argue whether they're prog or not, but that sort of thing, you know, sort of, if you like, serious music rather than pop music. So
yeah, absolutely, those were the best band. It's unbelievable that, in my opinion, right, in my humble opinion, the top three bands, according to me, came from the UK. The Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and Genesis with Peter Gabriel. For me, there's no doubt. There's a lot of great bands, of course, out there.
But it's funny. It's funny how much came out of Britain, really. You know, I mean, I suppose we've got the advantage that we speak the same language as America, so that gives us, you know, a big audience potentially. It's much more, you know, obviously Spanish has become really big in terms of its audience, but I think you'd be hard pushed if you were making music in German or something like that. It's just not a very big audience. So
yeah,
we fortunate language.
Yeah, many bands in your country, and you know, were born there, but they thought, well, the money's in the United States, so we need to start, you know, moving across the ocean to start touring there because we can get, you know, more money, more gigs, and more exposure, and so forth. So many, even Genesis, in what they came here in 1972 for 2 weeks. Nobody knew them, who they were. You know, it's unbelievable. All right, so I am very happy and lucky that Esoteric Records put me in touch with you, and I have the chance to listen to 12 Half Steps. That the release was coming up next month. So 12 is, although it's purely instrumental album, it's a collection in modal scale. Feel free to elaborate how that came together, the meaning of the title, you know, the process, your creative process. Feel free to elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, I've done a couple of albums a few years ago, and that sort of, I felt that had scratched the itch that I wanted to do it, and I got busy working with some Floyd stuff again, so it all went away. But with a big period of nothing much going on with Floyd, so I wasn't working, I suppose my desire to make some music again came back. And in this particular case, there's always something I need something to say to catch my attention. It's like, okay, that's an interesting thing, I want to do that. And for people, for the musicologists, Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, all that time ago, to demonstrate this new tuning technique, the way that we tune instruments now, and that was new back then. It was a different way of doing things. And he wrote a series of pieces, 24 pieces, which was 2 pieces in every one of the 12 keys to demonstrate this new instrument. It was a technical exercise, really. And I don't know why, I was just thinking about that, out walking one day, and it made me think of a similar thing, which the musicians will know about this, that if you think about the white notes on a piano, you can play a musical scale on that. But depending where you start, you get all sorts of different scales. And some of them are very normal sounding and some of them are quite odd. And you've got the same using the black notes on a piano. You get there's 5 notes there, so you can start on each of the 5 notes. So you get different patterns for each of the 12 notes as a starting place if you follow that rule. And it was just an idea that it would be really interesting to do pieces where you do one piece in each of those with each of those 12 starting notes. And it was just, so I just, sat down and started fiddling about. I thought, yeah, I really like this idea. So I just did, and I started. And in fact, I did them completely in order. So I started at the beginning. I started with C, which is the most obvious note, and then just moved my way up one note at a time and did each piece in turn. And each piece was somewhat suggested by what does that sound like when I play those notes, or also just a completely arbitrary thing of something caught my attention. It's like, listening to somebody else's record and thinking, oh, I like that vibe. What would happen if I tried to do something in that vibe or with that rhythm or something like that? So in each case, there were just a bunch of different starting points, but with this overall thing that this was the pattern of notes I was allowed to use in this piece. It was a kind of like working with a restriction. And it just made it an interesting project. And having done a couple of albums before where I sang and found that kind of difficult, and I didn't, I wasn't happy with my voice and things like that. And then to do an instrumental album was an obvious thing to do. And I just started, and it was, to be honest, it was mainly just because I wasn't really doing anything. I wasn't working. It was just something interesting to do to fill the days. And as I really got into it, and it was clear I was going to finish it and make an album. I got back in touch with Esoteric, who'd released my previous albums, and said, do you want to do this? And they said, yeah, sure, great. And here we are, and got an album coming out. So yeah, it was something to do when I was bored, really.
Yeah, it's an amazing album. I listened to the album twice last night when I was putting questions together for this interview, and each piece stand on his own. At the beginning, I thought, well, this is not very cohesive, but I listened to the album again, and it makes a lot of sense. It's like having a book with different chapters, I suppose.
I think that's it.
You read chapter 1, then you read chapter 3 or 4, whatever, in which order you prefer, and then at the end of the story, each chapter makes sense. If you understand.
Yeah, I think that's very right. I think you're right to say it's not very cohesive, but that I found really interesting, because I think when I've done things before, it's always been very much thinking about my core taste, which has got that background in prog and all of that, and the previous albums are very much like that there's a sort of narrowing of musical identity into one thing. And this was really interesting to say, well, don't do that. It's just like, oh, this is interesting, and this is interesting, and this is interesting. And, you know, the truth is that we all have a degree of broad tastes about all sorts of things. So it was just if it captured my attention at the time when I did it. And because each one I started it and finished it before I moved on to the next one. It was just like I just spent whatever it was, a week or two, looking at one thing, and that was really interesting. And then I did something completely different, and that was interesting. So in some ways, the whole album was done for my benefit. It was to amuse me. It was to amuse me in the process of doing it, really. But, you know, I think that's fine. I mean, you've got to make records for yourself. If you try and make records for other people, you're just trying to guess what other people like, and it just ends up being nothing, really. So, I mean, certainly, you know, like working with Floyd, I mean, David always say that. It's just like he does what he likes. And
that's right. Yeah.
Hopefully somebody else likes it as well, you know, but...
Absolutely. Plus, the other thing is that you don't have the pressure of a record label. Hey, you need to finish that, but April 15. It is April 15. It is April 30 now. The album hasn't finished. So in your case, no, you did it because you like it, and you took your time during the pandemic when you started or whatever, and you did it for, you know, as a gift from humanity and a gift from your family or whatever, your friends. And it's a very good album. I'm very happy, you know. So
I just did it for myself. It's something to do, you know. And I mean, I suppose it was about a period of a year, but I did a chunk, and then summer came and I put it away, and because I just, you know, did a little bit of work with David and things, and then summer came and I went and did other things and sailed a boat, and then when the weather got bad, I thought, oh, I should finish the album really, and got back to it. It's raining. I'll go and do some guitar.
Yeah, no, it's a masterpiece, and you know, hopefully, you know, you will get good promotion and a lot of help from the, you know, Cherry Red Records, and to promote your work, and you know, we'll sell a lot of records, and it's beautiful that people do things because they like it. It's a big difference. It's a big difference,
yeah.
You know. So
no, absolutely. I mean, you know, sure, there's something about, if you're going to create something, whether it's to make some music or write a book or you know, make a film or something, you kind of need that thing that you put it out to the public and other people can see it, to validate it, to say it's you know, that's the project in its completion. But really, I don't. Of course, it's nice to sell some, because, you know, that's means that other people like it, and also, you know, make a bit of pocket change and things like that. But really, for me, it's about doing it. It's the process of doing it. That's why I do it. It's because I like doing it. And if I'm involved in a piece of music, then nothing else fascinates me quite as much. And, you know, I'll get up in the morning and have to restrain myself from going and turning the studio on and having a listen before I've got dressed, you know, and end up sort of forcing myself to go to bed because it's like, it's so late. But it's just like, oh, just one more thing, just one more little bit of working on the music, because the process fascinates me. It always has. I mean, you know, I suppose that's why I took well to being a recording engineer, because I really like the process, and that's what the really interesting thing is. I kind of had the first Pink Floyd album I did on, you know, as primary engineer, which is Momentary, Lapse of Reason, you know, and they take a long time, those albums. The Pink Floyd albums always take a year and a week. That's what they always take, a year and a week for some reason. And at the end of it, I kind of emotionally needed it to be something that it couldn't be. I needed it to be, you know, like discovering aliens or something, you know, curing cancer or something, you know, something that was absolutely earth-shattering, which it can't be. All it can be is a good album. and that's the best it can be. And it was emotionally quite difficult for me at first to cope with the fact that that's all it was a record. You know, and you can say, well, people get a lot of pleasure from records, and they do, but it's only a record, you know. And there's a limit to how important that is. So I learned then that while what you get to matters, it's what I really value is the process of getting there. Because it can't be enough to justify the amount of attention you pay it and spending a year on something. It's just not big enough. And I think everybody says the same about creative processes. I mean, it's like people that write books. It's like, you know, they're always in the end disappointed with what they've got because they, you know, it took so much effort and took so long, and it can only be so good. And it's always said, particularly about writing books, that no book is ever finished. It's just abandoned. You know, you just can't do anymore. So they say, okay, well, it's finished. And I think that's true of any creative process. You can get hypnotized by doing it, but in the end, there's a limit to how fantastic it can be. So you just have to find an emotional place that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like I suppose, like an emotionally let down when you are done with something, being a book or a paint. You know, if you're a painter, or you know, a record or whatever, you work so hard to put something together. You did the best you could. You argue with people and so on and so forth, back and forth. It takes a long time, and then, okay, guys, this is it. You know, this is the last touch. You know, the console is turn it off, and then go to the to be printed. So it's
Well, I've learned that I don't look back. You know, when it's finished, and then I move. You know, and then I do something else. Because there just seems to be, for me, a better way of dealing with it.
Yeah. In your respect to your album, you did it. Nowadays, you know, a lot of things could be done with a good computer at home, or you did it like at home in a home environment, or you end up going to the studio to remaster after like you did at home.
No, the same as everyone else. It's bedroom studio. Just me and my spare bedroom with a computer. Really, same as anybody else makes much these days.
Yeah.
The only thing I went into the studio for was on the album. There's an Atmos, a Dolby Atmos, as well as the stereo, and I don't have the facility to do that, so I borrowed David's studio to do the Atmos mix. You know, just went in there for a week to do that. But otherwise, no, it's all just done in my bedroom, same as everybody else.
Is it difficult to when you need to release a Blu-ray to do the surround sounds and Dolby Atmos? It is the process. Feel free to elaborate in the process because it's very, very interesting. See, what bothers me is for people, you know, download music from the web, right? Buy an MP3. They put in the car, a USB or whatever. It's okay, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, I get it that not everybody has, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 to buy a nice stereo at home and you know, Dolby or surround sound, but it makes a big difference. It's big. The people that enjoy music, you know, it's a big difference to appreciate something, you know, with a good stereo and a good sound. It makes a world so different, right? And the process for you know, is complicated. So feel free to elaborate it, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, Atmos is just a step up from the previous surround thing, but it's, you know, essentially, if you know, once you've done surround, it's similar. I mean, you know, there's certain technicalities you've got to deal with. So obviously, I've been doing surround for a long time. Of, you know, every release that we've done since surround was available, we've done it in surround. Floyd, you know, David, or whatever. And yeah, I really like it. I mean, I love it. I mean, whenever I do a surround mix, I then listen to the stereo, and it's slightly disappointing. And it's just like, oh, I love this surround. Right. You know, it also, I think, a record also has to work that it's, you're playing it on, an Amazon speaker in the background in the kitchen while you're doing the cooking. It has to work like that as well. Ultimately it's about the music, but then the other stuff is all just, the fact that it sounds really good, or you've got big cinematic pictures or something like that, is a fantastic bonus for those that get it. It's just an extra level that you can get into, and it's got to sort of exist on all those levels. So I've been just doing this for a living, and I think a lot of people that do this for a living say the same thing. It kind of spoils your ability to just enjoy music like a normal person, because you can't help, your ear is just always you can't just have it wash over you. You're always listening to it. It draws your attention, and you're listening to it, and you're listening to it as if you're working on it, and it's very difficult to turn that off. So it's been quite nice for me recently, because the work has kind of really just stepped away, because there's nothing going on in Floyd world. I mean, there's been the re-release of Dark Side, but all I had to do was master the live thing. I mean, it was like I've done very little on that, so I haven't really done anything with them apart from a few odd days here and there for God knows, a couple of years now. So it's been a really nice depressurizing away from that, and I found that I started putting music on in the kitchen while I was doing the cooking. I sort of did, it got back to just being able to be someone that listened to music because I liked it, and just, I don't know, whatever, it's like listening to Ziggy Stardust again or something like that, just stuff or stuff I hadn't heard before sometimes, and it's been really nice to get back to just liking music like a normal human being. So I think that's part of what got me back into doing it again, was being able to just depressurize from not working for a while, and because there's just so much, there's only a limit to how much you can really pay attention all the time to music or anything. There's a guy that I've worked with, and he does a lot of orchestral recording, and he mainly works doing music for films. And he said it became the same for him with movies. He can't watch a movie anymore because he's aware of how it works and then
wow.
he can't, take no notice of the man behind the curtain. It's like, I can't ignore it, kind of thing. So he just looks at a movie, and he's just, everything's about scenes and cues and things like that. And it's just like spoiled. He can't watch a movie anymore. He's like, he can't listen to a record and he can't watch a movie. So, but you just need to stop doing it for a while, and then it comes back, and then you remember why you liked it in the first place, kind of thing. You can just
yeah, it's amazing. I suppose that if you go and see a movie versus you are a director or you're an actor, it's psychological, my body, because you understand how the movie was put together versus me going to see a movie. It's a great movie. How they did it, have no idea how it came together, but the people that understand how it came together, it's a disappointment, a letdown, because they're even very critical this time. Man, you turn on TV, right? And your friend that does, music for films, say, man, that's terrible. They should have done this and this.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot turn that off, in your head, because you.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah, I mean, a huge amount of why this came about is because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working anymore. So it allowed, it just allowed the pressure to go down, and it's just like, oh, okay, and relax, and it's like, oh, okay, music. What's this music stuff? I remember that. Yeah, I like that.
Got it. So some years ago in 2016, you did another great album called 73 Days at Sea.
Yeah.
And, feel free to elaborate the same question, how it came together, why you put that together, the meaning of the 73 Days at Sea. It's important as well.
Well, I kind of said a little bit about this in the album notes, that I'd come up with, I'd done one a couple of years before that, Signal to Noise, which was the first one I'd kind of really done as a solo artist. And 73 Days at Sea, it sort of came about from listening to some other stuff and thinking it'd be quite interesting to make an album where it's kind of in three sections, and there's a group of songs that belong together, and then another group of songs, and then another group of songs, three sections, like a three movement thing. And I found that I was writing lots of things around to do with the sea. And so I thought that would be one of the movements, but then I just found I just kept writing about the sea, and so all of it became about that. So I abandoned the three movements thing, and the whole thing became about that. And the title was a newspaper headline. It was about, I think, a new world record had been set for people living, under the sea, in a pod or something like that. It was just a newspaper headline I saw, 73 Days at Sea, and I just thought, you just pick that up like like a magpie, just sort of collecting things. And I just thought, I just really like that as a title. And so it doesn't have any more meaning than that. It's just an allusion to the idea of, focusing on the sea for a long time. And as it happens, at the time I was working, what was I doing? I don't know, can't remember. Some project with David. And at the time he was living in Brighton, right by the seafront. So I was going backwards and forwards to the sea most days, and I took my little mobile recorder and went and walked around the beach and recorded the sound of the sea, which is on the album. So
that's right. Yeah,
the sound of the sea on that album is outside David Gilmour's house, which is there's an amusing thing for information collectors. That's David's Sea in Brighton. So it just becomes one of those things that there isn't necessarily any great meaning in it. It just becomes something where it catches your attention for a while, and so you do that. And of course, I mean, the sea. Human beings have had a relationship with the sea for an incredibly long time, and it's full of symbolism, and there's so many.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's so many phrases and things like that are something to do with the sea, being adrift or whatever, or all washed up, or I can't even, loads of them. So it was just a fruitful starting point, really, to write some songs, and that was it, really. So
it's I listened to the album this week again. I have the CDs, and I don't know if it's available on vinyl or not, but it's a very good album. I really like your stuff, and it's
there was a lot
very
of things
well put together and thoughtful, and
a lot of things I really like about that. I've just reached a point where I don't want to be singing again, because I found it really difficult, and I think it's one of those things. To sing well, you need to have done it for a long time, and I haven't. So it was a deliberate thing to do, because I wanted to be able to do the album myself and have full control about it, and just be me, really. Both of those albums, and so it was a deliberate choice to sing. You end up just maybe not liking it. I remember talking to Phil Manzanera about that, and he said that he'd been through the same process, and there's one album of his that he sings on, and he didn't go back to it because you don't really like the results, and so rather have other people do it. To go off at a tangent, I've just started. Well, I'm a little way into the next album, because something immediately, just by chance, I just finished this one, 12 half steps, and something caught my attention, which was just something I found on the internet, which was that there's getting some pretty good synthetic singing things now. So basically it's a computer program, and you type in the notes and you type in the words and it sings And there's a Japanese company that are doing some really good stuff. And I listened to the demos and I thought, wow, that's really pretty good. And I thought 90% of the time it's completely convincing as a person. Occasionally you can tell it's a machine. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And right at that time was at the time when suddenly the whole world was talking about ChatGPT, and what was going on with AI and all of that. And then there's all that stuff about, I spent 2 hours like digging into ChatGPT and it got really weird and all of that, all of that was starting to happen. And I thought, okay, well, how about some music sung by an AI about being an AI? So it's deliberately, it's not pretend, it's not the idea of, is this convincing as a human being? It's like, this is the AI singing, and it's going to talk about being an AI and but then at times you won't realize that it's talking about being an AI. It will be like, this sounds like a normal love song, but it's actually really weird because it's a machine doing it, I'm doing that and it's great. And it's lovely, and I'm writing songs again with singing in it. But it's not a human being singing; it's a machine, and it's fantastic. Well, it's some great voices. Really, anybody that I've played it to, that doesn't know it's an AI, it never occurs to them that it's not a human being, because it wouldn't
really.
And also if you listen to, I don't know, a lot of pop music, Taylor Swift or whatever, it doesn't sound like a human being either. It's so processed that,
That's
that
right.
is, so yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's okay. When is that is for a project for next year or
well, I don't know when I finish it. So I'm working on song number 4 at the moment. So, I don't know.
That's one third.
Yeah. So once I've got, I don't know, once I've got about 10 songs, then I'll make, then it'll be that. I don't know, because it's not mapped out in the same way as the previous one. It's just I'm doing a bunch of stuff, and at first it was really easy to get lyrics and things because I could just like find things where people have written down about some of the stuff it says, ChatGPT or whatever, some of the weird stuff it comes out. Just take that and you kind of rearrange it into lyrics and things like that.
Sure.
It's been an interesting process because you start to, without going into this too much, I mean, the way that, there's been a lot of conversation about the way that these AI or large language models work. And about how it's kind of like a human being, but then it's not, it's not. Are they thinking? Or it's like, no, not thinking. It just looks like thinking and all of that.
That's right.
But then I started to notice that my own sort of like weird glitchiness about the way my brain works, or I suppose the same with anyone, that, you notice all these things where you get things that, like if you see something out of the corner of your eye and you think it's something, but it's something different, and that sort of thing. And it's the same thing with the mental process. So I started to notice my own glitching. So that became something that I could incorporate into that, was the way that we're AIs as well, or, it's just, it's just been an interesting. And of course, that's a story that develops by the day, the whole thing of AI, and suddenly everyone's looking at this, So
the whole world's going to. It is changing right now. It had been changing for a while. Good or bad, depending on the point of view, right? So, you mentioned Phil Manzanera. He's a very nice guy. I go to London like UK in general, like 3 times a year. So I was in London last month in March, and I visit Phil Manzanera's studio. He's a very nice person. He's a very nice.
He's a lovely man. Really is.
Yeah, he's a very good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we obviously spent quite a bit of time together on a couple of projects, Floyd projects. I mean, doing Endless River, and then
that's right.